The Queen's last mistake. The Grand Pit of Zalthakar was a place of spectacle where blood ran like wine, and the reptilian crowds roared for carnage. It was a colosseum carved from black stone, ringed with sharpened obsidian spires, and filled with the stink of sweat, dirt, and death. At the very top, seated upon a throne of bone and gilded metal, Queen Kazara of the Thalvora yawned. She was a creature of towering stature, her emerald-green scales gleaming beneath the artificial suns overhead. Her tail lazily curled around the armrest, her claws tapping rhythmically against her throne as she observed the prisoners shuffling in their cages below, mostly humans. A few others, a tentacled Yvrathi here, a burly Jaran there. But humans were her favorite, fragile, predictable, boring. Her advisor, a wiry reptilian with deep red scales, inclined his head. "My queen, I believe I have a solution to your boredom." She flicked her tongue out lazily. "This had better be worth my time, Varzin." He gestured to the overcrowded pens. "Our slave cells are full. The people grow restless. What if, instead of culling the numbers quietly, we entertained them? Trial by combat. A chance for the weak to fight for survival, while the strong revel in bloodshed. And of course your name will be on every tongue. Your power unquestioned." Kazara sat up slightly, considering. Her forked tongue flickered. A public thinning. How deliciously pragmatic. "Fine. We shall begin immediately." With a dismissive wave of her clawed hand, she commanded, "Fetch me a contestant. Let us see what these soft creatures are made of." The gates to the pit groaned open, and from the depths of the slave pens, a single human was dragged into the arena. A woman. She was unremarkable at first glance, medium height, lean but not overly muscular, clad in tattered remnants of what had once been a flight suit. Her dark hair was cut short, and her pale, scarred face bore an expression of nothing. No fear, no desperation. She simply stood there. Queen Kazara grinned, her fangs glinting. "Oh, this is almost sad," she said to the gathered spectators. "A mere human female, thrown to the mercy of the pit. Will she beg? Will she cry? Perhaps she will try to run?" The human did none of these things. She simply stared at the Queen with an unsettling calm, as if measuring something unseen. Kazara's amusement grew. "You bore me already, little thing. Here." She reached to her side and plucked a blade from a nearby guard's belt. With a casual toss, she flung it at the human's feet. "Make this entertaining." A slow murmur rippled through the crowd. The Queen, so confident in her superiority, was gifting her prey a weapon. A bold display, a fatal mistake. The moment the sword clattered to the ground, the human moved. Fast, too fast. Before Kazara could react, before the guards could step forward, before the crowd could even process what was happening. The woman was upon her. She didn't hesitate, didn't revel in the moment, didn't gloat. She simply took the sword and drove it into the Queen's heart with mechanical precision. A single, calculated strike. The Colosseum fell deathly silent. Kazara, the mighty Queen, blinked in disbelief, clawed hands grasping at the blade buried deep in her chest. She gasped, her powerful body betraying her, her limbs spasming as she fell forward off her throne, slumping onto the cold stone. The human pulled the sword free, letting the Queen's lifeblood spill onto the ground. A slow ripple of shock spread through the crowd, then murmurs, then roars. Varzin was the first to react, stepping forward with a sharp inhale. "By the ancient laws of combat," he declared, voice carrying over the stunned audience, "the one who slays the reigning queen becomes the new ruler." The reptilian spectators erupted into chaos. Some hissed in outrage. Others, those who had grown weary of Kazara's rule, laughed. And the human, she simply stood there, blood-spattered and silent, watching as the weight of her actions settled over the arena. Varzin hesitated before bowing deeply. "All hail, Queen of the Thalvora. The crowd roared again, and the human finally spoke. Her voice was calm, even, "Bring me the keys to the slave pens." And that, dear listeners, is how a human became queen of the Reptillians. Days passed. The throne room of the Thalvora was no longer filled with the arrogant laughter of Queen Kazara, but with a tense, uncertain silence. The new queen, the human, ruled differently. She freed the slaves, dismantled the gladiatorial games, and implemented a rule of pragmatism instead of cruelty. Some of the reptilian nobles resented it, but none dared challenge her. She had proven herself, but there was something wrong. She felt it in the way her skin prickled at night, in the way her fingers tingled, as if something beneath them wanted to emerge. And then, on the fourth day, she stepped into her chambers, stripped off her battle-worn clothes, and stepped under the steaming cascade of the palace's showers. The water turned pink as it washed the last remnants of Kazara's blood from her skin. For the first time since taking the throne, she allowed herself a moment of peace. She tilted her head back, eyes closed, inhaling deeply. Then she opened them and screamed. Scales, tiny at first, barely noticeable, speckling her arms and shoulders in patches. She stumbled back, her wet feet slipping against the stone floor. Her breath came fast, sharp. No. She lunged toward the mirror. Her reflection stared back. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then she blinked. Her pupils contracted into vertical slits. She fell backward against the shower wall, shaking her head. No. Her heart pounded. She held up her hands, her fingers trembling. The scales were spreading, slow but certain, creeping up her arms, down her torso. Her nails darkened, sharpening into subtle points. She staggered to her feet, gripping the edge of the sink, forcing herself to breathe. She leaned in close. Her face still looked human, mostly. Then, in the dim light, she noticed the faint ridges forming just above her brow, the way her cheekbones seemed just a bit sharper, the way her teeth. She parted her lips, fangs. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The Queen's blood. It hadn't just marked her, it had changed her. And as she stared at her own reflection, a terrifying thought slithered into her mind. What else was going to change? And that, dear listeners, is what happens when you kill a reptilian queen and get her blood on you.